The year was 2155, and humanity had taken its first step into the vast unknown. After centuries of dreamers, scientists, and adventurers pushing the boundaries of what was possible, Earth had launched its first successful colony mission into deep space. The Pioneer, a colossal interstellar ship, carried humanity's hopes to a distant star system, one where they hoped to plant the seeds of a new beginning. The mission wasn't just a journey to explore. It was a desperate bid to ensure humanity's survival beyond the cradle of Earth. On board, Captain Ella Harding stood at the observation deck, watching the stars swirl around them as the ship's artificial gravity hummed softly. The weight of command hung heavy on her shoulders, but she had always been the kind of leader who faced challenges head-on. However, this mission was different. Every decision, every risk they took, could decide the fate of every human left on Earth and every soul aboard the Pioneer. "Captain," came the voice of Dr. Amir Kaul, the mission's lead scientist and biologist. He was a tall, quiet man with sharp eyes that saw the world in equations and probabilities. "The preliminary scans of the planet ahead show promising signs. It's the best candidate we've found so far. With some adjustments to our life support systems, we could establish a colony within a few weeks." Ella nodded but didn't respond immediately. Her mind was already weighing the risks. The unknown stretched out before them, vast and unforgiving. They were fragile. The technology they relied on, though advanced, could fail. The human body, adaptable as it was still prone to failure in the harshness of space. Earth had been their cradle, but now they were on their own. "Have you run the tests on the radiation levels?" she asked, finally looking over at Cowell, who shuffled through a datapad before responding. "Not yet, Captain, but our preliminary models suggest the planet's atmosphere is thin. There's a high chance of radiation exposure. I'm working on ways to mitigate the damage, but we'll need time," Call replied, his brow furrowed. He had been working non-stop since they'd left Earth, obsessing over every detail. "It's not ideal, but it's survivable." Ella's gaze hardened, looking back out at the distant planet. "I'm not interested in survivability. I'm interested in thriving. We've come too far to settle for less." In the command center below, Sergeant Marcus Cole was busy coordinating with the fleet's tactical unit, ensuring the security of the ship and its resources. Cole was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. He had spent decades in the military, seeing the harshest of realities. His experience made him the perfect officer to oversee the safety of their fragile operation. "I don't like it," Marcus said as he stepped into the observation deck. "A planet this close to a red giant? Radiation levels fluctuating gravitational? Pulls? Too many unknowns for my taste?" He leaned against the rail, arms crossed. "I'd be a lot more comfortable if we had a little more backup." Ella turned to face him. "I know the risks, but we don't have the luxury of waiting for perfection. If this planet doesn't work out, we're not coming back. It's either this, or we die waiting." Marcus grunted. He had seen the fragility of life firsthand. In his mind, humanity was still a species struggling to make sense of a universe that seemed indifferent, even hostile. But that fragility was something he had learned to respect. It was the reason he believed they had to fight for every inch of space they gained. "We'll make it work," Marcus said, finally uncrossing his arms. "But you're right. This isn't about surviving. This is about proving we belong out here." The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone aboard the Pioneer had come to this moment for different reasons, but they shared a common understanding. The galaxy had no place for weakness. They could survive, adapt, and thrive in the face of hardship. But only if they learned to push beyond the limits of their biology, their minds, and even their understanding of the universe. The crew wasn't just tasked with settling a new world. They were tasked with reshaping humanity's destiny. As the Pioneer neared the planet, Ella gathered the crew for one final briefing. "We've come here not just to survive, but to show. the galaxy that humanity is more than just fragile. We are adaptable, we are capable, and we will make a place for ourselves in the stars. We'll face the unknown, and we'll bend it to our will. The crew listened, nodding, their eyes filled, with the same determination that burned within Ella. This mission was humanity's first step into the larger universe. If they could succeed here, they would prove something fundamental, that humanity, born fragile, had the capacity to become something unbreakable. Cliffhanger. As the Pioneer approached the planet's atmosphere, a sudden, unexpected shockwave rattled the ship, sending alarms blaring through the corridors. The unexpected turbulence threw the crew off balance, and the planet they had thought they could control suddenly became far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. This concludes Part 1. It sets the stage for the challenges ahead, building up the stakes and establishing the fragile but resilient nature of humanity. The cliffhanger introduces a sudden and unpredictable obstacle that will challenge the crew in unforeseen ways. The unexpected shockwave had thrown the Pioneer into chaos. Crew members scrambled to their stations, fighting to maintain control of the ship as the alarms blared overhead. In the command center, Captain Ella Harding gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white. The Pioneer had never faced something like this before. It was as if the planet itself was warning them to turn back. "Report!" Ella barked, her voice sharp through the chaos. "Captain," came the calm voice of Lieutenant Sarah Thompson, one of the flight engineers. "We've taken some hull damage. The shockwave was far stronger than anything we anticipated. I'm rerouting power to stabilize the core systems, but we need repairs." "Status on the planet?" Ella demanded. They could repair the ship, but the mission was still the priority. She needed to know if the planet was still viable. Dr. Amir Cowell appeared beside her, his face grim. "The shockwave disrupted our initial scans. The planet's atmosphere is more volatile than we predicted. Not just radiation, there are seismic activities happening beneath the surface. We may be dealing with an unstable environment." "Then what's our plan, Doctor?" Marcus Cole's voice came over the comms, cutting through the tension in the command room. He was on the lower decks, making sure the crew was prepared for anything. "We stay the course," Ella replied, standing and turning toward the viewport. Below the planet's surface was a patchwork of jagged terrain and swirling storms. There were areas that appeared to be habitable, but the entire landscape seemed to pulse with danger. "We've come too far to turn back now. We can adapt." "We must." Dr. Cowell, ever the realist, shook his head. "Captain, with all due respect, adapting won't be enough if we can't even make it past the planet's atmosphere." Ella's eyes narrowed as she met his gaze. "We didn't get this far by backing down, Amir. Find a way to make it work. We're not turning around." She didn't wait for his response, already turning back to the communication array to give orders. The crew had to prepare for whatever the planet threw at them. "Sergeant Cole," she spoke into her comms. "I need a full report on all personnel readiness. We may be deploying sooner than expected." "Understood, Captain," Marcus replied, his voice steady. He had always believed in the value of preparation. The fragility of humanity could be its greatest strength when channeled into focus. As the hours passed, the ship continued to shake and groan under the pressure of the storm outside. Repairs were underway, but the Pioneer had been damaged more than they cared to admit. Ella stood by the observation deck once more, staring at the violent planet below them. She had always believed in the strength of humanity, but now, as she stared at this seemingly unyielding world, doubt began to creep into her thoughts. "We can survive this," she whispered to herself, repeating the mantra. She believed it, but the weight of command was heavier than she anticipated. They had come so far, and yet everything seemed so fragile. Meanwhile, Dr. Call worked tirelessly in the lab, studying the environmental data as it streamed in. He knew they had to understand the planet's core dynamics before they could safely land. But with each scan, the data grew more inconsistent, more erratic. The planet's natural processes were buckling under the intensity of the storms. If they were to make a successful landing, they needed answers fast. "We're looking at a planetary system in the middle of a transformation," Call muttered, scanning the results. "If we don't act now, the shock waves could continue indefinitely. It's only a matter of time before the radiation levels spike again." Ella approached him, her face set in determination. "How do we mitigate it, Amir? I don't care how. Just give me something." Cowell paused for a moment, his fingers hovering over the control panel. "We need to stabilize the planet's core. It's the only way to prevent further seismic disruptions. But that would require resources and technology we don't have aboard." Ella didn't flinch. "Then we find another way. We're humans, Cowell. We don't quit just because things are difficult." Dr. Call's expression softened. "I know. But we're fragile. We've always been fragile, even with all our technology. We can only stretch our limits so far." Ella gave him a hard look. "Then it's time we showed the universe what humanity is truly made of. We'll adapt. We'll make the impossible possible." Hours later, the Pioneer descended toward the planet's surface. The storm clouds parted just enough for the landing team to make their approach. Ella stood at the front of the landing bay, her heart pounding. The crew was ready, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead gnawed at her. "Ready for deployment, Captain," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "We've got limited time before the storm picks up again. We'll need to move fast." Ella gave a sharp nod. "Let's move. For humanity." As the landing craft's engines roared to life, the crew braced themselves for impact. Through the thick atmosphere, the planet came closer with each passing second. In the distance, the landscape appeared more alien than they could have ever imagined. Towering mountain ranges, cracked plains, and a sky that shifted unnaturally, as if the planet itself were alive. The Pioneer's landing thrusters flared, cutting through the storm's intensity as the craft touched down on the surface. The crew disembarked, immediately covering their faces against the planet's harsh winds. Through the swirling dust and intermittent flashes of lightning, Captain Harding led her team forward. The first step they took on this alien world marked not just a physical journey, but the beginning of humanity's quest to transcend their fragility. They weren't just here to survive, they were here to conquer. Cliffhanger. As they set foot on the planet's surface, a deep rumble beneath the ground vibrated through their boots. The storm intensified, and the ground itself began to crack. The very world they hoped to colonize seemed to be fighting against them. A new threat was awakening beneath their feet. This concludes Part 2. The crew faces mounting challenges and risks, with growing doubts about their ability to survive. The cliffhanger sets up further tension and potential disasters, as the planet seems to have a mind of its own, pushing the fragile humans to their limits. The ground shook again. It wasn't a tremor. It was a roar. A deep, guttural sound emanated from below, as if the planet itself was protesting their presence. The Pioneer's crew had barely set foot on the surface before the earth beneath them began to ripple violently. A harsh wind cut through the air, and the sky, once darkened by the storm, now seemed alive. Flashes of erratic lightning dancing in the distance, lighting up the jagged landscape. "Fall back," Captain Ella Harding shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The crew of the landing team, still in the process of securing equipment and establishing a perimeter, scrambled to move to safety. They had barely set up their first markers before the planet's violent response made it clear. They were not welcome. The massive storm they had descended into was growing more dangerous by the minute. A thick cloud of dust swirled in the air, stinging their faces, and the rumbling from deep within the planet sounded louder now, like something waking up from an ancient slumber. It wasn't just the environment that was hostile, it was as if the very land was alive, responding to their arrival. "Get the gear to the lander," ordered Sergeant Marcus Cole, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to get off the surface. Now." The team hustled to gather their equipment, but the tremors were relentless. Rocks began to shift and fall from the nearby cliffs. A loud crack echoed through the air as a chunk of the mountain face splintered, tumbling down, in a cascade of stone and dust. The planet was coming alive, and it wasn't taking kindly to their presence. "Captain, I'm seeing something in the seismic data." Dr. Amir Kaul's voice crackled over the comms, a sense of urgency in his tone. "There's a massive energy buildup beneath the surface. It's not natural. It's too precise. This planet may have been engineered." Ella's brow furrowed. "Engineered? By who? And why?" "I'm not sure yet," Kaul replied. "But whatever is down there, it's waking up. And if we don't get off this surface, we might not live long enough to figure it out." "We don't have time to debate," Ella snapped, looking out at the storm that had now intensified into a full-scale tempest. "Cole, get the crew back to the shuttle, now." The landing team made a hasty retreat, but the storm was closing in fast. The roar beneath them grew louder, a continuous rumbling sound as though the very core of the planet was shifting. Lightning arced down from the sky, striking the ground with unnerving precision. It was as if the planet was trying to force them back, to make them understand that they were intruders. "Get to the shuttle," Marcus shouted, motioning for the last few stragglers to hurry. His hand reached for his weapon instinctively, though he knew there was little they could do against the raw power of the planet's fury. Just as the last of the crew clambered into the shuttle, a violent quake rocked the ground beneath them. The entire shuttle trembled as the earth buckled, the metal groaning under the pressure. The door slammed shut, and the engines roared to life, pulling the ship off the surface just in time. As they ascended into the stormy skies above the planet's surface, the crew could see the land beneath them breaking apart, vast fissures opening up across the landscape. It wasn't just an earthquake. The entire planet seemed to be shaking itself apart, as if the very foundation of the world was being torn asunder. "Report!" Ella demanded, her eyes scanning the control panel in front of her. "They were still in danger." "Radiation levels are spiking," Cowell said from the science station in the back of the shuttle. "It's a cascade effect. Whatever happened, it's accelerating. And I don't think this planet's storms are just weather. There's something else happening here." "We'll be out of range soon," Marcus said from the cockpit, focusing on the turbulent skies outside. "Should we try again once we have more data?" Ella took a deep breath, watching the once pristine view of the planet now dissolving into chaos beneath them. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her. The mission had already taken a dangerous turn, and they're fragile. Human bodies couldn't withstand much more of this. They'd come so far, but now they had to reconsider everything. "No," she said finally, shaking her head. "We're not coming back down there. We've overstayed our welcome. Let's get back to the Pioneer and regroup." As the shuttle ascended into the dark sky, the violent storms continued below. But there was one thing clear. They were not alone in this galaxy. They had stumbled upon something ancient, something powerful, and something that wasn't about to let them settle so easily. Hours later, back aboard the Pioneer, the crew gathered in the command center, their faces grim. The data had been compiled, and the evidence was undeniable. Whatever had caused the planet's violent reaction was not natural. It had been engineered, perhaps millennia ago, by a race far older and more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. "We need to figure out what's really going on here," Ella said, her voice low but resolute. "This isn't just a hostile world, it's a trap, a test, and we've walked right into it." "We've barely scratched the surface," Cowell added, looking over the data. "The planet has a core energy signature that isn't just natural. Whoever engineered this world wanted something from us. And I don't think they're finished." Ella's hands clenched into fists. Humanity had been fragile, yes, but they had never been ones to back down. If there was something on this planet that threatened them, they would face it head-on. They would not let the galaxy decide their fate. Cliffhanger. As the crew started to make plans to investigate further, the Pioneer's sensors detected an anomaly. A large, fast-moving object was heading toward them. Fast. It was unlike any ship they had ever seen, and it was coming in at full speed. There was no time to prepare. This concludes Part 3. The planet's hostility reaches its peak, but the mystery of its origins begins to unfold. The crew is forced to regroup and rethink their approach, with new, potentially deadly threats lurking just beyond their reach. The cliffhanger sets the stage for an impending confrontation, raising the stakes even higher. The Pioneer's sensors flashed warnings as the unknown object neared. A massive craft, sleek and alien, cutting through space at an unnatural speed. The ship was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. No familiar design patterns, no recognizable propulsion system. It was a silent predator in the vast void, and it was coming straight for them. "Captain," Marcus Cole said, his voice tense. "We've got less than 2 minutes before they make contact. Should we hail them?" Ella Harding stood rigid, eyes locked onto the sensor readouts. The object wasn't just moving fast, it was also calculating its trajectory with eerie precision. It was clearly not a random encounter. "No," she said firmly. "We don't know who or what they are. Initiate defensive protocols. Keep shields up. We're not taking chances." The crew scrambled to their stations. Tactical systems powered up, and the Pioneer's defenses hummed to life, though Ella knew they were no match for whatever ship was heading their way. Her gut churned with a sense of foreboding. Seconds felt like hours as the object closed in. Then, without warning, a sharp pulse of energy lashed out from the ship, striking the Pioneer's shields with a deafening boom. The ship rocked violently, sending crew members stumbling. The warning alarms blared once again. Shields holding. "Captain," the tactical officer reported, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "But that hit was more than we've ever encountered. They're testing our defenses." "Return fire," Ella ordered. She wasn't about to wait for whatever this ship's intentions were to become clear. "Target their engines. Disable them, if we can." Before Marcus could confirm, another blast from the alien ship struck the Pioneer. This time, it was closer to the heart of the ship. The hull groaned in protest as the blast hit a vulnerable section of the aft. Sparks flew from the control panels and the lights flickered. "Damage control teams to Deck 5, Ella shouted, moving quickly toward the rear of the command center. She could already hear the shouting of the engineering crew as they worked to stabilize the failing systems. "Captain?" Call's voice came through the comms, cutting through the chaos. "I think I know what we're dealing with. This ship, it's not just a warship, it's a relic. I've run scans, and it's giving off traces of energy signatures that match those in the planet's core." Ella's mind raced. "You mean the planet's builders?" "Possibly," Call replied, "but I'm getting more. The readings match ancient technology, too advanced for any known civilization. This could be a remnant of whoever engineered this planet." "Then we're dealing with a weapon," Ella said, piecing the puzzle together. "We must have triggered something when we landed. A security protocol left behind by the creators of this world. And now, they're here to deal with us." "We don't have much time," Marcus said, his voice tense. "We need to decide quickly. Either we disable them, or we prepare for boarders." A new scan blinked onto the screen. The alien ship was locking onto the Pioneer with a tractor beam. Ella's heart skipped a beat. They had no time to escape. The ship was pulling them in. "Brace for impact," Ella shouted as the ship lurched violently. In the blink of an eye, the unknown craft had completed its approach, its strange energy, signature wrapping around the Pioneer like an invisible tether. The ship trembled as the tractor beam hauled it toward the alien vessel. The seconds that followed felt like an eternity. Ella stood firm, her mind racing through potential strategies. They couldn't let themselves be captured. A direct confrontation could lead to disaster, but there was no guarantee they'd survive if they simply waited. "Captain," Marcus said, urgency in his voice. "They're pulling us inside. I can't fight this." Ella's mind snapped to a plan. She turned to the bridge crew. "Prepare all emergency systems. As soon as we're inside, we go dark. Cut all external power. We're going to play dead." A murmur of agreement spread throughout the command center as they worked to power down non-essential systems, preparing for the worst. The ship's systems hummed quieter, and the crew braced for what came next. The Pioneer drifted toward the alien ship's docking bay, the lights from the alien craft casting long shadows over their ship's hull. Inside, the sound of the tractor beam's pull ceased, but the looming silence outside was deafening. As the ships locked together with a resonant thud, Ella stood, her jaw set, facing the darkened viewport. She didn't know what awaited them on the other side of the airlock, but she knew they had to be ready for anything. "Get ready for anything," she said, turning toward Marcus and the others. "We don't know who's on the other side, but we'll face them, together." Inside the docking bay of the alien ship, the air was thick with tension. The crew gathered their gear, prepping weapons and ensuring their suits were sealed tight. The environment outside the airlock was unknown, but there was no turning back now. "Captain," Dr. Cowell's voice came through the comms, sounding distant. "I've analyzed more data from the scans, and there's something else. This ship, it doesn't appear to have an active crew. The readings are showing no life signs aboard, but there are still signals. Something is controlling it. Whatever it is, it's more than just a ship. It's a weapon." A weapon. The word echoed in Ella's mind. The pieces were falling into place. Whoever had built this ship and the planet it orbited had left behind a force, waiting to awaken. And now it had. The airlock hissed open. Cliffhanger. The door to the alien docking bay slid open, and the crew stepped forward, weapons drawn. The space before them was vast, and yet eerily quiet. But ahead, deep in the shadows, a figure stirred. Its silhouette was barely visible, but it was unmistakable, a shape that was neither human nor anything they had encountered before. This concludes Part 4. The crew faces an unexpected battle, with the alien ship proving to be far more than just an obstacle. The mystery of the planet's builders intensifies as the crew realizes they are not just dealing with an advanced weapon, but something that could change everything they know about the galaxy. The cliffhanger introduces a mysterious figure, setting the stage for an intense confrontation. The airlock hissed as it opened, and Captain Ella Harding stepped into the shadowy expanse of the alien ship's docking bay. The dim light that filtered from above cast long, haunting shadows against the metal walls, the surface covered in strange, metallic runes and glyphs that seemed to shift as they moved. The atmosphere felt dense, unnatural, like the very air was waiting to react. "Stay sharp," Ella murmured to her team, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hand instinctively hovered near her sidearm, but her mind was sharp with caution. The alien vessel was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and the stakes were higher than ever. Behind her, Marcus Cole moved with practiced precision, his eyes scanning every corner of the vast space. The Pioneer's crew had been through countless dangerous situations, but something about this felt different, darker. They were no longer just explorers. They were intruders in a realm they barely understood. "Nothing yet," Marcus said, checking the perimeter. "No sign of life, no movement, no energy signatures beyond the ship's core. It's like a ghost ship." Ella frowned. "Not entirely. Cowell said the ship was still emitting signals. We're just not picking them up." They moved deeper into the bay, the hum of the ship's energy grid resonating through the walls. Every step was cautious, every footfall measured. This wasn't just an exploration anymore. This was survival. As they ventured deeper, the faintest sound echoed in the silence, a soft scraping noise like metal against metal. Ella's heart rate quickened. She motioned for the team to stop. The sound was subtle, but unmistakable now. There was movement ahead. A figure emerged from the shadows, its shape shifting like liquid in the low light. The crew tensed. Everyone, raised their weapons, but their hands shook with uncertainty. The figure wasn't human, but it didn't look entirely alien either. The silhouette was tall and thin, with long limbs and a fluid, almost skeletal posture. The face, if it could be called a face, was elongated, the skin smooth and reflective, with no visible eyes, nose, or mouth. The creature seemed to absorb the light around it, blending with the environment. The figure stepped forward with an eerie grace, its movements slow and deliberate. "Is it alive?" whispered Sergeant Marcus Cole, his voice barely audible. "Not sure," Ella replied. She squinted, trying to focus on the figure. "It's definitely not human, but it's not entirely mechanical either. It's—" Before she could finish, the figure spoke. Its voice wasn't audible in the conventional sense. It was more of a vibration, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through their bones. The language was unlike anything they had encountered, an impossible jumble of tones and frequencies. Yet somehow it felt familiar, almost like it was speaking directly into their minds. "I am a watcher," the being's voice said, clear now, despite its otherworldly timbre. "You should not have come." The words hit them like a physical blow. The crew froze. Ella's mind raced. "A watcher?" she repeated, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. "Who are you?" The watcher tilted its head as if considering her question. "We are the architects of this world and of many others. We created the first seed of life, planted it in the cradle of the galaxy. But life is a fragile thing. You humans are the closest to it ever becoming unbreakable. You do not understand the cost of what you seek." Ella stepped forward cautiously, heart pounding in her chest. "We came here to explore, to understand, to conquer, you mean?" The watcher interrupted, its voice cold. "You come seeking power, seeking to claim what was never meant for you. You are not ready." Ella's mind raced. This creature, this being, had knowledge of them, of humanity, as if it had been watching them all along. And yet the warning in its voice was clear. Humanity was being watched, scrutinized, and possibly judged. "We aren't trying to conquer," Ella said, her voice firm despite the growing unease. "We're trying to survive. We came here to understand what happened to this world, and to ensure that humanity doesn't repeat the mistakes of the past." The watcher's form rippled, its shape seeming to stretch and compress, as though its very body was a living paradox. "You misunderstand. This world is not your salvation. It is the final tomb for the ones who sought to make themselves gods. You will not escape the same fate. Humanity is fragile. You are always fragile. The galaxy does not tolerate the unworthy." Suddenly, the watcher's body seemed to destabilize. Its limbs twisted in impossible angles, and a violent pulse of energy surged from its form, blasting through the air in a wave of raw power. The crew staggered back as the ship shuddered under the force of the blast. Ella barely regained her balance as the energy pulsed again. This time it was more directed, a beam of force aimed straight at them. She instinctively raised her arm, shielding her face, and heard a burst of static in her comms. "Move!" Marcus shouted, pushing Ella forward. The watcher's figure blurred. Again, and this time it seemed to dissipate into the very air. One moment, it was there, and the next, it was gone. Vanished. Like smoke. The crew stood in stunned silence, gasping for breath. Their weapons were still raised, but there was no sign of the watcher. The strange vibrations of its voice still lingered in their minds. "What just happened?" Carl's voice crackled through the comms, but it was tinged with fear. "What was that thing?" Ella was silent for a moment. She wanted to process everything. The warning, the overwhelming energy, the realization that they were not just dealing with a hostile planet, but with a presence that had been waiting for them. Something ancient, far older than humanity. We need to get back to the Pioneer, Ella finally said. Her voice was steady, but her mind was racing. Now. Cliffhanger. Just as the crew turned to make their exit, the faintest whisper filled the air, a final message from the Watcher, barely audible. You cannot leave. The price of knowledge will always be paid. This concludes Part 5. The crew has their first direct encounter with the mysterious Watcher, and the true danger of the planet and its creators begins to unfold. The Watcher's cryptic warning raises the stakes even higher, leaving the crew to wonder what consequences they will face for disturbing the ancient forces at play. The cliffhanger teases that the Watcher's power and influence may not allow the crew to leave unscathed. The Pioneer was a sanctuary, but now it felt like a cage. As the crew scrambled back to the shuttle bay, their hearts raced with every step. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the weight of the Watcher's warning still heavy on their minds. The crew moved as a unit, instinctively staying close to one another, eyes constantly scanning for any sign of the creature's return. Marcus Cole, ever the professional, was the first to break the silence. That thing, whatever it was, it's not like anything we've seen before. It didn't even fight us. It didn't have to. It controlled the space around it, like it was part of the ship itself. Ella Harding didn't answer immediately. She was focused on getting the team back to the Pioneer and sealing the shuttle bay behind them. The Watcher's words had cut through her like a blade. The price of knowledge will always be paid. That cryptic statement lingered in the air, gnawing at her resolve. Captain, Dr. Amir Cowell said, his voice trembling with uncertainty. What do we do now? If that creature really is a remnant of the Builders, what happens when we try to leave? Are we being tracked? Ella's fingers hovered over the controls of the shuttle as she locked the doors. The thought had crossed her mind as well. If the Watcher was an ancient sentinel left behind to guard something, what was to stop it from following them? And if they were being watched, what kind of consequences would they face? We need to get back to the Pioneer and analyze the data we've gathered, Ella said, her voice steady despite the rising sense of dread. We need to figure out what's really happening here. The shuttle lifted off, cutting through the dark, storm-tossed sky. As the ship gained altitude, the unsettling silence that had fallen over the crew seemed to deepen. There was no doubt in their minds now. They were being watched, but by whom or what remained a mystery. Back aboard the Pioneer, the tension was palpable. Ella and the crew gathered in the command center, their faces grim as they reviewed the data collected from the planet's surface and the alien ship. Captain, the readings from the planet's core are more complex than I initially thought, Dr. Call said, studying the holographic projections that flickered above the table. The energy signatures we're detecting don't match any known species. But the patterns, they're almost like a fail-safe mechanism. A fail-safe for what? Ella asked, leaning in. I'm not sure, Call replied. But it seems like the Watcher, whatever it is a key part of the system. The planet itself, its energy, its storms, its very structure, it's all designed to protect something, or prevent something. I believe the Builders were afraid of what their creation could become. Afraid of us? Marcus spoke up from the side, his eyes narrowing. That's the question, Ella said, staring at the holographic readouts. What did they create? And why are they so afraid of it falling into the wrong hands? A sharp ping cut through the tension. The comms officer, Ensign Rachel Hayes, glanced up from her station. Captain, we're receiving a transmission, distress signal. It's faint, but it's coming from a nearby system. A distress signal? Ella frowned. From where? Rachel punched a few keys on her console and the screen flickered, with a jagged image of a damaged ship floating adrift in space. The transmission was fragmented, barely holding together. It's an old ship, Captain, Rachel said, her voice steady despite the chilling sight on the screen. But the message, it's not human. This vessel, it looks like one of the Builder ships. The image was distorted, but the damage was clear. The ship was ancient, its hull scorched, its outer plating shredded. Yet, despite the visible signs of destruction, there was an unmistakable energy signature coming from it, faint but still detectable. "Can we get a clearer image?" Ella asked. Rachel nodded. "I'm enhancing the signal now. It's coming from a nearby nebula, but I don't understand. It's as if the ship is being pulled toward the nebula's core." "Another relic?" Marcus muttered, looking over Ella's shoulder. "Maybe. But something doesn't feel right," Ella said, her eyes narrowing. "This signal, it might be a trap. Or worse, it could be a warning." "We're going to investigate," she said after a long pause, her voice filled with resolve. "We can't just leave it out there. If it's one of the builder's ships, it might hold answers. Answers that could save us." Cal stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Captain, we don't know what we're walking into. The energy signatures from that ship? It's like nothing I've ever seen. It could be a lure, or even worse, a containment." "I'm not going to sit here and do nothing," Ella shot back. "We go in. We find out what's happening. We find out what the Watcher is trying to protect." Marcus, ever the realist, nodded. "I'll prep the team for an away mission, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We have no idea what we're walking into. We could be staring down a relic of unimaginable power." Ella didn't flinch. "I know, but humanity was born fragile, and we've been fighting ever since to prove we're unbreakable. We're not going to let this galaxy die alone." As the Pioneer turned toward the nebula, the crew felt the weight of their decisions settle heavily upon them. There was no turning back now. Whatever lay ahead in the shadow of the builder's ship, they had no choice but to confront it. Ella stared out at the dark expanse ahead, where the nebula pulsed with faint light, as if calling to them. The distress signal had become a beacon, and they would follow it, no matter the cost. Cliffhanger. Just as the Pioneer neared the nebula, a sudden, powerful pulse of energy shot out from the heart of the nebula, striking the ship with a force that sent everyone reeling. The ship's lights flickered and dimmed, and a new, more ominous voice echoed through the comms. "You should not have come. This concludes Part 6. The crew is faced with an ancient distress signal, possibly from the builder's ship, and the decision to investigate sets them on a path they cannot return from. The danger increases as they enter the nebula, and a new, ominous voice warns them against their mission. The stakes are higher than ever, and the mystery deepens with every step. The Pioneer lurched violently as the pulse of energy from the nebula washed over the ship. The lights flickered and dimmed, casting the command center in ominous shadows. Ella Harding's hand gripped the console as the ship groaned under the strain. The sudden surge had knocked the power grid unstable. "Report!" Ella barked, her voice cutting through the disorienting noise. "Shields at 25%, Rachel Hayes, the comms officer, said, her face pale. "Hull integrity is holding, but the pulse has scrambled our sensors. We can't get a clear scan of the nebula, and the distress signal is gone." "Damn it," Marcus Cole muttered, his fingers flying over his tactical console. "This doesn't feel right, Captain. It's like something's trying to keep us from going any further." Ella nodded grimly. The energy pulse wasn't just a random flare, it was a deliberate warning. And it was clear that whatever lay within the heart of the nebula, it wasn't welcoming them. "Full power to the engines," Ella ordered, her voice steady. "We're going in. We need answers." "But Captain," Cowell interjected, his voice tinged with concern. "If we push through now, we could lose more than just the shields. We're in uncharted space, and this nebula, it's full of anomalous energy fields. We don't know what's inside." "We don't have a choice," Ella said, her gaze unwavering. "We either move forward or let this warning keep us in the dark. Humanity can't afford to be afraid of the unknown." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but there was no argument. Ella had made the call. With a heavy shudder, the Pioneer lurched forward, engines roaring as they pushed into the dark heart of the nebula. The atmosphere outside the ship was thick with swirling cosmic energy, a kaleidoscope of colors that seemed to warp and twist in impossible patterns. The ship's sensors remained erratic, unable to fully penetrate the dense, crackling energy field. Inside the command center, Ella stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the flashing lights and erratic data streams. "We're approaching the core," Marcus said, his voice tense. "Something's pulling us in. It's not just the gravitational force. It's more like a tractor beam." Ella's jaw tightened. "Cut power to the forward thrusters. Engage auxiliary controls. We need to fight whatever this is pulling us in." For a moment, it seemed as though the ship resisted, as if the nebula itself was an entity bent on forcing them deeper into its core. The Pioneer shook violently again, the lights dimming further. On every screen, the readings fluctuated wildly. "This is insane," Rachel shouted. "I can't stabilize the comms, Captain. We're not getting any feedback from the outside world." Ella could feel the pressure building in her chest as the ship continued to fight against the unseen force, but her resolve remained firm. "We press on. No matter what. Set course directly to the center. We need to find the source of that distress signal." As they neared the heart of the nebula, the ship suddenly jerked forward with a violent force, sending the crew staggering. The walls trembled, and a loud, bone-shaking rumble echoed through the hull. For a moment, the entire ship was plunged into darkness. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the ship stilled. Ella's heart raced in her chest as the screens flickered. Back to life, revealing a structure massive and imposing, emerging from the swirling fog of the nebula. It was a ship, but unlike anything they had ever seen. Ancient, massive, its surface lined with intricate, glowing symbols that pulsed with life. "Is that a ship?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "No," Ella replied, her breath caught in her throat. "That's something far older." The ship was massive, larger than any vessel they had ever encountered, yet it was not entirely solid. Parts of it shimmered and distorted as though the material itself was in a constant state of flux. Energy rippled across its surface, and the symbols seemed to shift in response to their approach. Before she could respond, the ship's exterior seemed to come alive. A bright pulse of energy shot outward, not in the form of a weapon, but a wave of communication. It was as if the ship itself was reaching out. "Captain!" Cowell exclaimed from the data console. "The energy readings, they're identical to the signals we've seen before, only stronger. We're being integrated into its systems." Ella's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a simple encounter. It was a melding of their ship with the unknown vessel, and the Pioneer was being pulled into the depths of its systems. The power on their ship started to fluctuate once again, and Ella could see their shields quickly weakening. "Cut all external power," she commanded. "We need to disconnect from it before we're completely integrated." But it was too late. Flash of brilliant light enveloped the Pioneer, and Ella felt the overwhelming sensation of weightlessness, as if they were no longer anchored in space. The crew gripped their stations, trying to maintain control, but the lights flickered once more, and the world around them began to blur. "What is happening?" Marcus yelled, his voice tinged with panic. The monitors around them began to glow, with unfamiliar data, far beyond anything the crew had ever seen. It was as though the ship was speaking directly to them, each data point, each symbol, a message they couldn't understand. Suddenly, an image appeared on the main screen. A massive ethereal figure took shape, its form humanoid but radiating, an almost divine presence. The figure's eyes glowed like twin stars, piercing through the very fabric of reality itself. "You have entered my domain," the figure's voice boomed, not through the comms, but directly into their minds. "You were warned, yet you persisted." Ella's breath caught in her throat as she stared into the infinite gaze of the figure. This was no mere ship. This was something more. a force that had transcended the bounds of the galaxy itself. "Now, you will learn the price of your defiance," the figure intoned, "and you will understand why you were never meant to know the truth." Cliffhanger. The figure's eyes blazed brighter, and a wave of energy surged through the ship, flooding the crew with a blinding light. As the light enveloped them, Ella realized with growing horror that they might never leave this place. The price of knowledge was about to be paid. This concludes Part 7. The Pioneer is pulled into the heart of the nebula, where they encounter a massive, otherworldly ship. The crew is forced to confront a powerful and ancient being that reveals their ignorance of a much greater truth. The stakes are now higher than ever, and the crew faces an unimaginable danger as they learn the true cost of their pursuit of knowledge. The cliffhanger leaves them teetering on the brink of an irreversible fate. The blinding light surged around them, swallowing the Pioneer whole. Ella Harding's vision blurred, and a deafening hum filled her ears. Her hands clenched tightly around her console, her knuckles white. It felt like the ship itself was being torn apart by the force of the energy pulse, and yet there was no way to fight it. The hum intensified, and the light grew impossibly bright. It was as though the very fabric of reality was being stretched, pulled, and reshaped around them. Ella tried to speak, but no sound came from her mouth. The figure's voice, impossibly deep and resonant, reverberated through her bones. Humanity was not meant to know, the being's voice echoed inside, her mind overwhelming her consciousness. "You are not ready for the power you seek." Ella could feel the weight of the words pressing against her, each syllable like a hammer on her chest. Yet, through it all, she fought to hold on to her will. Humanity had come this far. They would not bow to the unknown, not now. "We are ready," she thought back, her mind struggling to project the words. The being's eyes, two glowing orbs of pure energy, fixed on her. The ship's systems were gone, replaced by the alien energy that flowed through every circuit, every part of the Pioneer. It was as though the entire vessel had become a conduit for the entity's will. "You have defied the boundaries of your kind," the figure said, its voice calm but full of authority. "Your species is young, fragile, yet you persist, you adapt, you survive, and this will be your greatest strength." Ella didn't flinch. The crew was shaken, but they remained steadfast. "We are unbreakable," she thought fiercely. "We are human." "Humanity's fragility is what makes it resilient," Cowell said, his voice breaking through the overwhelming presence in her mind. "We learn. We change. We grow." The figure regarded him with what felt like a silent nod, though its face never shifted. "You are right, Dr. Call. But the cost of your pursuit of power is never without consequence." Suddenly, the overwhelming light receded and the room returned to normal, but not entirely. They were still inside the being's domain, suspended between space and time. The ship was intact, but it no longer felt like their own. It was as if the walls themselves pulsed with an ancient alien energy. "We've been here too long," Marcus Cole muttered, his hand still gripping his weapon, though it now seemed irrelevant. "What does it want from us?" The figure's voice again, not through the ship's speakers, but inside their minds. "You are free to leave," it said, the tone almost serene now. "But there is a price for the knowledge you have gained. The truth is not a gift. It must be earned. And even now you stand at the precipice of that cost." Ella's heart raced. "What is the cost?" she demanded. "What do you want from us?" The being's gaze locked with hers, and the weight of eternity seemed to press down on her. "You seek to understand. You want to unlock the power of the builders. But the path you walk is not one of victory. It is a path of trial. Humanity was never meant to inherit this power. The galaxy was not made for your kind to rule. but you will not leave empty-handed. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They were so close, but the realization was dawning on them. There was no easy way out. They couldn't simply take what they had come for and leave. The Watcher's warning had been only the beginning, and now they stood face to face with the truth. "What does that mean?" Cowell asked, his voice quiet but trembling. "What will happen to us?" The figure's voice softened. "You will carry the burden of what you know, the weight of this. Truth will change you. Humanity is fragile, but you are capable of more than you realize. The question is not whether you will fall, but whether you will rise." A deep rumble filled the air as the ship around them seemed to pulse with new life, its systems coming back online with unnatural speed. The crew felt the surge of energy, and for the first time the full extent of the Pioneer's connection to the alien vessel became clear. "Leave now," the figure said. "Take what you have learned, return to your people. But know this, your species will never be the same. You will either rise to meet your new destiny, or you will be swallowed by it. The choice is yours." Ella's mind raced. She was no longer the captain of a starship. She was standing before an ancient being whose words had the power to shape the future of humanity. The weight of that responsibility crashed down on her, but she stood tall. "We will rise," she said firmly. "Humanity will never back down." The figure's eyes flared briefly. "Then prove it!" With those final words, the light faded, and the Pioneer was free. The crew found themselves once again in the dark expanse of space, the nebula's swirling colors drifting behind them like a fading memory. For a long moment, there was only silence. "Captain," Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with awe. "What now?" Ella looked out into the void of space, the weight of their encounter with the unknown settling into her bones. "Now," she said, her voice filled with quiet resolve, "we bring this knowledge to our people. Humanity has always been fragile, but we will make ourselves unbreakable, and we will shape the future of this galaxy on our own terms." As the Pioneer drifted away from the nebula, Ella looked to her crew, a sense of unity and purpose binding them together. They had faced the unknown and survived. And now, humanity had a choice, to rise or to fall. But Ella Harding knew one thing for certain: they would not die alone. This concludes Part 8 and the story of Born Fragile, Made Unbreakable, the story of humanity among the stars. The crew of the Pioneer has faced unimaginable challenges and discovered a cosmic truth that will forever change the fate of humanity. The story ends on a note of hope and defiance, as humanity, fragile yet unbreakable, rises to claim its place among the stars.